It had been 6 months since my mother last called me. 6 months since she'd spoken to me without an agenda. 6 months since the last family dinner where she forgot to set a place for me. And then, on a cold November night, I looked down at my phone and saw the text that collapsed everything. We've agreed you're no longer part of the family. Don't come to any gatherings. Before continuing with the story, thank you for coming here. For more stories, please subscribe to the channel. And please mention where you listened to it in the comments. Thank you. I was standing outside my office on West 46th Street, the air sharp enough to sting, the city already decorated for Christmas. Traffic hissed by. But all I saw was that one message, glowing on the screen like a verdict. In that instant, I understood the size of the assumption my family had made about me. They believed I would disappear quietly, that I would accept exile without contest, that I would play the role they had assigned me, the daughter who doesn't fight back. They assumed I had no proof, no leverage, and no desire to challenge the decision they'd crafted behind my back. The chipped mug I always carried, a ridiculous comfort object from college, felt heavy in my hand. I remember tightening my grip around it as if grounding myself. I'd bought it during a year when I still thought family love was unconditional. Now it was just a motif of a lesson I was still learning. My first reaction wasn't tears. It was clarity. Cold, measurable clarity. I didn't reply. Instead, I slipped my phone back into my coat pocket and walked to my car, letting the city noise swallow the sting. A moment like that demanded a plan, not a performance. But the scene didn't end there. As I reached my car, another message arrived, this time from my younger sister, Abby. Just so you know, Mom didn't want to do this, but we all agreed. It's better this way. Don't make it weird. That phrase, don't make it weird, was her favorite shield whenever she sided with whoever held the most power in the room. I unlocked my car and sat there, engine off, breath visible in the cold. Scene, then backfill, present, then fracture. Because this moment didn't appear from nowhere. It was the culmination of months of quiet pressure, my mother's insistence that I sign over a portion of the lake house so it stays in the family, my refusal to hand over something I alone had renovated and paid for, and the escalating coldness that followed. She had convinced everyone, maybe even herself, that my boundaries were betrayal. A call flashed on my screen, my husband, Daniel. He was working late, as usual. I answered. You okay? He asked. His voice was soft, tired. I just got a text from my mom, I said. She says I'm no longer part of the family. Silence. Then, do you want me to come get you? No, I said, steady. I'm going to handle this. Because in that moment, I realized something else. If they were bold enough to exile me by text, they were confident I didn't have anything concrete to push back with. They were wrong. I opened the glove compartment, took out the small leather folder where I kept important documents, and slid my chipped mug into the cup holder. Then I started the engine. If they wanted to make this official, I would give them something far more official in return. Before I drove off, another message arrived, not from family, but from the Lakeside Community Office manager. Your mother called about the property bylaws again. Might be good to stop in when you can. Proof. A thread. A starting point. I shifted into drive. They wanted me gone from the family gatherings. But I had every intention of showing up, just not in the way they expected. I was back at the Lakeside Community Office before sunrise the next morning, the sky still a dull blue over the water. The hum of the old HVAC system echoed through the hall as I stepped inside, still holding my chipped mug, still replaying those messages in my head. The manager, Mrs. Keller, silver hair, sharp memory, no patience for nonsense, peeked over her reading glasses when she saw me. Your mother's been busy, she said before I even sat down. Busy how? She's been calling about transferring partial rights to your lake house. Says the family agreed it would be better if the deed reflected everyone's shared history. There it was again, the family agreed. Their favorite tactic. Majority pressure. Manufactured consensus. Never mind that I bought the house myself 10 years ago after a brutal stretch of 70-hour work weeks. Never mind that I'd spent 2 summers renovating it while everyone else treated it like a free vacation home. What mattered, apparently, was that they wanted it, and assumed I'd never challenge them. Is there something I need to worry about? I asked, keeping my tone even. Mrs. Keller pulled out a thin binder. Only if you didn't read the bylaws when you bought the place. Oh, I read them, I said. All 40 pages. She smiled faintly. Then you remember Clause 14b. I did. I hadn't thought about it in years, but the words drifted back. Any transfer of shared rights or alterations to ownership must receive written, notarized consent from the title holder, regardless of familial relationship. It was a footnote, small, forgettable, something my mother had likely overlooked or underestimated. I nodded. So she can't do anything without my signature. Correct, Mrs. Keller said. I told her that. Several times. She insisted you'd come around. Of course she did. In her mind, I was still the daughter who bent instead of broke. As I left the office, the November wind cut along the lake. I stood there for a moment, letting it wake me up fully. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Mom, 1 from Abby, 1 from my father, who rarely called unless it involved siding with whoever made the loudest argument. I didn't call back. Instead, I drove straight to my office downtown. My assistant, Lila, looked up from her desk the moment I walked in. You're here early, she said gently. Everything all right? Not yet, I said. But it will be. I closed my office door and pulled up the text thread with my mother. I didn't reread anything, I already knew which lines mattered. Each one was a breadcrumb, a statement of intent, proof of a pattern. What they thought was emotional leverage might become legal clarity. As I scrolled, I noticed something I had missed the night before, the timestamp. 11:58 p.m. 2 minutes before midnight. My mother hated texting late. She believed it made her look undisciplined. Which meant she had waited all day, maybe all week, to drop this bomb right before the date changed, as if she wanted it recorded on a different day for some reason. That unsettled me more than the words themselves. Later that afternoon, the doorbell camera notification on my phone lit up. Someone was at the lake house. I tapped the feed. My mother was standing on the porch, jangling something in her hand. A key. My key. Or rather, the old spare I had replaced years ago. She slipped it into the lock. It didn't turn. She tried again, frustrated. After a minute, she pulled out her phone and called someone. I told you she must not have changed the locks, she snapped. She's always predictable. Just get over here. We'll try the kitchen door. Predictable. That single word warmed me like a spark. I saved the footage automatically, the system did that anyway, but this time I tagged it manually, attempted entry 1. I didn't intervene. I didn't call. I didn't warn her. Because this wasn't the day to confront her. This was the day to watch, document, and let her dig the hole she thought she was laying for me. At 6 p.m., while I was packing up to leave, Daniel called again. You're quiet, he said. I'm worried. I'm being methodical, I corrected him. There's a difference. You think your mom is serious about cutting you off? She's serious about exerting control, I said. Cutting me off is a tactic. But losing access to the lake house? That's the real motive. He hesitated. What do you want to do? I looked at the saved clips, the messages, the binder notes from Mrs. Keller, and the tight cluster of missed calls. I want to give them enough rope, I said, so when the time comes, they can pull themselves off the cliff without my help. That night, I drove to the lake house myself. The air smelled like pine and cold dirt. I walked around the property, testing each lock, confirming they were secure. And then I found it, a small piece of paper tucked behind the side door, fluttering slightly in the wind. My mother's handwriting. We'll talk when you're ready to make responsible decisions. The family is counting on you. Don't drag this out. The arrogance. The certainty. The assumption that cutting me off would force me to comply. I folded the note, slid it into my coat pocket beside my chipped mug, and breathed out slowly. They had made their first move. Now it was my turn. 2 days later, a Saturday morning, I found myself sitting in my car outside my parents' house, watching through the windshield as relatives filed in one by one. Coats, casserole dishes, forced smiles, another family gathering I wasn't supposed to come to. They thought I'd stay away. They assumed the text had done its job. But I wasn't here to walk in and make a scene. I was here because of a short voicemail Abby left the night before, a voicemail she didn't realize she left while her phone was still recording after she thought the call disconnected. I replayed it now, listening to the background chatter. Mom's voice, she'll cave. She always does. Dad, she won't fight us. She never has. Abby, and if she does? The lake house deed isn't in our favor. Mom, she doesn't know that. Dad, then we make sure she doesn't look closely. It's family, for God's sake. Mom, exactly. She'd never embarrass us by challenging anything. A soft laugh. Mom again, besides, once we get that house sorted, we can talk about bringing her back in. But she needs to learn. She needs to stop acting like she's separate from us. Separate. Their favorite accusation whenever I drew a boundary. In that instant from the first night had been clarity. This moment, sitting here listening to the recording, it was confirmation. They didn't exile me because they meant it. They did it because they believed fear of losing family would make me obedient. I turned off the car. A memory surfaced, 3 months earlier, when my mother asked me for a copy of your lake house paperwork, just for organizing old files. I had declined, politely. She had sulked for a week, then claimed she had no interest in the place at all. Lies had expiration dates, hers were aging quickly. I opened my bag and pulled out my folder of documents. The official deed. The notarized proof of renovation. The community bylaws with clause 14b highlighted. And the newest addition, the attempted entry footage from my doorbell camera printed as still images. My chipped mug sat in the cup holder, cracked handle catching the light. It reminded me why I was doing this. Not spite. Not revenge. Accountability. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Do you need backup? I typed, no. But thank you. Because this wasn't a confrontation. Not yet. This was reconnaissance. Another car pulled up, my cousin, Mark. He got out, looked around, then spotted me. He frowned, then walked toward my window. I lowered it. I thought you weren't allowed here, he said quietly. Apparently, I answered. What did they say? That you're being difficult. That you're trying to block some family decisions. He leaned closer. But I don't buy it. Something's off. I studied his face. Mark wasn't close to me, but he wasn't cruel. That alone made him an outlier. What did you overhear? I asked. He lowered his voice. Your mom's been talking as if the lake house is already partially theirs. She keeps mentioning the document you agreed to sign. Except no one's seen it. Of course. She was building a story. Preparing witnesses. Laying groundwork for justification later. What do you need from me? He asked. I need you to stay out of the line of fire, I said honestly. This is going to get messy before it gets clean. He nodded once and left it at that. I watched him walk inside. I didn't follow. Instead, I turned the ignition and drove away. Because I didn't need to step into that house to know what they were saying. I had enough evidence. Enough proof. Enough contradictions. But halfway home, my phone rang. My father. I answered on Bluetooth. Where are you? He demanded, not even bothering with pleasantries. On the road, I said. You were seen outside. That's inappropriate. Inappropriate for who? The family is trying to have a peaceful afternoon. Your presence stirred things up. My presence? I echoed. I didn't get out of the car. It doesn't matter. This is exactly why we needed distance. There it was, the reframing, the blame shift, the narrative sculpting. I'm not discussing this over the phone, I said. You don't get to dictate terms, he snapped. Actually, I said calmly, I do. And we'll talk when you're ready to speak to me without assuming I'm powerless. He spluttered, offended, and I ended the call mid-sentence. I pulled into my driveway 20 minutes later and wasn't surprised to see someone waiting on my porch. Abby. Arms folded. Jaw set. The image of someone sent to retrieve a lost item. I stepped out of the car. She didn't move. We need to talk, she said. No, I replied. You need to talk. I'll listen. She lifted her chin. Mom's upset. You showing up today was manipulative. I laughed once under my breath. I didn't get out of the car. She hesitated. Then, fine. But you made her anxious. And the lake house situation? There is no situation unless you're creating one. I'm trying to help, she insisted. By siding with whoever shouts the loudest? I asked. Her cheeks flushed. We just want what's best for everyone. And you think taking my property is what's best? She froze. That told me everything. I knew Mom told you, I said quietly. She didn't tell me everything, she murmured. Just that you needed guidance. That you weren't handling things responsibly. Responsible. Another coded accusation. I've handled everything responsibly, I said. I always have. But I'm done doing it quietly. Abby swallowed hard. You're blowing this out of proportion. No, I said. I'm documenting it. That shook her. What do you mean? I stepped past her, unlocked my door, and before going inside I said one last thing. Tell Mom I'll see her soon. And this time, she won't be controlling the narrative. The door shut behind me. I leaned against it, breathing steady, pulse ironclad. My chipped mug sat on the hallway table. I touched it lightly, grounding myself again. Because the time for quiet observation was ending. The time for action was coming. 3 mornings later, I arrived at my office to find an envelope taped to my door. No postage. My mother's handwriting. My stomach didn't drop, it tightened in recognition, another attempt to control the timeline, the tone, the story. I unlocked my office, closed the door behind me, and opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a family mediation agreement she'd apparently drafted herself. It wasn't legally binding, not even close, but it was written as though it were. By signing below, you acknowledge that the lake house is a shared family legacy and agree to transfer partial rights for future stability. It even had a blank signature line waiting for me, like a teacher expecting a student's pledge. The arrogance was almost artful. I didn't tear it up. I scanned it into my system, saved a PDF copy, timestamped it, and added it to the growing folder labeled Family, Boundaries and Violations. My phone buzzed. A call from Dad. I ignored it. Then a text from Mom arrived, as if coordinated. Saw you got the agreement. Please don't delay this. You know we're doing what's best. What's best for whom? Best for their access? Best for their narrative? Best for whatever illusions they'd built about ownership and legacy? I typed nothing. Silence was my leverage. Around noon, I received another doorbell camera alert from the lake house. I expected my mother again, or Abby. But when I opened the feed, I froze. My father. He stepped onto the porch, looked around, and pulled something from his coat pocket, a small silver object. He held it up to the camera. A brass key. Not the old spare. A new one. A copy he believed would work. Except it wouldn't. I'd changed the locks after Abby's porch visit. He tried anyway. 1 attempt. 2. A frustrated exhale. He stepped back, muttering into his phone. I turned up the volume just a bit. Dad, the key doesn't work. Mom, it should. She never changes anything. Dad, well, she did this time. Mom, then try the back door. Dad, I'm not breaking in. Not on camera. Mom, there's no camera back there. Dad, how do you know? Mom, she's not that clever. I saved the clip instantly. Tagged, attempted entry 2. The irony wasn't lost on me. They thought I wasn't clever. They thought I never changed anything. They thought I wouldn't challenge them. And they were leaving their assumptions on tape. At 1 p.m., my assistant knocked on my office door. Someone's here for you, she said carefully. Before I could ask who, my mother walked in. Her heels clicked across the floor like she owned the entire building. She sat without being invited, crossed her legs, and folded her hands atop the mediation agreement she'd apparently brought a physical copy of. You're making this harder than it needs to be, she began. I'm working, I said. This can't wait. It can, I corrected. She blinked. I rarely contradicted her openly. You've blown things out of proportion, she said. Your reaction is dramatic. You sent me a text disowning me, I replied. She waved a hand dismissively. It was a boundary. A wake-up call. A threat, I countered. A manipulation. It was a push, she said. You needed to understand the consequences of withholding the lake house. I stared at her. So the text wasn't about family. It was about property. Her posture tightened. Family and property go together. Our legacy goes together. My house isn't your legacy, I said. It's mine. You're being selfish. I'm being lawful, I corrected again. Her eyes narrowed. You always twist things. That was rich. Coming from the angler of narratives herself. You enjoy making me the villain, she said softly. It's easier for you than accepting responsibility. For what? I asked. For distancing yourself. For refusing to participate in the family. For thinking you're above us. I smiled faintly. This isn't about distance. It's about boundaries. She leaned closer. If you sign the agreement, we can fix everything. No, I said. You don't get to say no, she snapped. I just did. She inhaled sharply. If you walk away from this, don't expect us to take you back. There it is again, I said. Conditional love as negotiation. It's not conditional, she said. It's realistic. I reached into my drawer, pulled out a printed still image from the doorbell camera of her at my kitchen door with the old key, and placed it on the desk between us. The color drained from her face. What is this? She whispered. You attempted entry twice, I said. Once with the old key. Once with Dad trying a new one. That's taken out of context. The context is a legal entry, I said calmly. She swallowed. We just wanted to talk to you. You were shutting us out. You texted that you didn't want me as part of the family. That was emotional. You shouldn't take everything literally. And yet, I said softly, you expect me to sign your literal agreement? Her jaw clenched. You're making a mistake. No, I said. I'm clarifying one. Her voice dropped to a low warning tone. You're choosing to isolate yourself. When everything falls apart, don't come running to us. I'm not isolated, I said. I'm choosing peace. And you won't have it, she snapped, standing abruptly. Not if you keep this up. She left in a swirl of perfume and indignation. I sat there for a moment, breathing steadily. The chipped mug on my desk reflected a distorted version of my face, warped and imperfect. Like family loyalty when it becomes a weapon. My phone buzzed. A text from the community office manager, Mrs. Keller. I checked the records. Your mother requested copies of property forms last week. She mentioned a pending transfer. I thought you should know. A pending transfer that required my notarized signature. A notarized signature they did not have. But they were acting like they did. And that told me exactly what their next move would be. That night, after dinner, Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder. You're awfully calm, he said. I'm preparing, I replied. For what? For the moment they try to cross the line they think I don't see. He nodded once. And when they do? I'll be ready with the truth. I touched the chipped mug beside me. My anchor. My reminder. My proof that even broken things can be functional, grounded, steady. Because the next move was coming. And I was no longer reacting. I was waiting. On Thursday evening, just after sunset, the line crossed. I was sitting at the dining table reviewing quarterly projections when my phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender made my chest tighten, not with fear, but with the familiar sting of betrayal completing its shape. Subject: Lake House Partial Transfer, Confirmation Pending. From Harriman & Cole Property Services. A property firm. Not one I had ever hired. I opened the email. My mother's name was listed under Initiating Party, and beside it, in bold, was a line that almost made me laugh out loud. Awaiting final signature from title holder. Provisional documents received via family declaration. Family declaration. A meaningless phrase. A legally hollow phrase. Something they must have invented on the spot. Attached was a PDF of a scanned signature page, and signed, but with a faint shadow where someone had attempted to photocopy a forged signature. A sloppy imitation of my handwriting, barely passable to someone who had never met me. In that instant, I understood the scale of their assumption. My mother, my father, and Abby convinced themselves that the property firm would process a partial transfer without any real scrutiny, and that I, blindsided or guilt or ashamed, would simply sign to correct the record. They assumed I wouldn't read fine print. They assumed I wouldn't know the bylaws. They assumed I wouldn't dare push back publicly. They assumed wrong. I forwarded the email to myself, saved all attachments, and printed 3 copies. Then I opened the folder where I'd been organizing everything: the texts, the mediation agreement, the handwritten note, the attempted entry footage screenshots, and now the provisional transfer attempt. All of it was more than enough. Still, I wasn't rushing. Justice that lasts requires patience. Scene backfill present. Backfill. 2 weeks earlier, when I refurbished the Lake House security system, I had added cameras that captured not just entry attempts but voices near the perimeter, clear, time-stamped audio. I hadn't told anyone. Not because I wanted to catch something, but because experience had taught me caution. Return to present, my phone buzzed again, this time a text from my father. We need to meet as a family. Tomorrow at 2. Your presence is required. Required. I typed back, where? He responded instantly. Your uncle's community hall. Neutral ground. Neutral ground. They were speaking as though this were a tribunal and they were the judges. But that was precisely what I needed, a setting where they believed they had control. The next day, I arrived exactly at 2 p.m. My chipped mug was in my bag, along with the folder of proof. The community hall was half empty, echoing with that faint hollow sound of cheap acoustics. My parents were at a folding table up front. Abby paced nearby, wringing her hands. Mom's face tightened when she saw me. You're late. It's 2 o'clock on the dot, I replied. We started early, Dad said, as if that somehow made me late. Abby pulled out a chair for me, which was unusual. I sat. She perched beside me like someone assigned to monitor a witness. Mom placed a document in front of me. We need your signature to finalize the family decision. Let's not drag this out. The family decision, I echoed. Consisting of who? All of us, Mom said. Except me, I said. The actual owner. Mom inhaled sharply. This isn't about ownership. It's about unity. Unity through coercion. Unity through manipulation. I leaned back. Before we proceed, I have a request. Dad scoffed. This isn't a negotiation. It is now, I said. My tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. Mom tapped the paper. Your signature. Instead, I opened my bag, placed my chipped mug on the table between us like a quiet anchor, and pulled out the folder. One by one, I laid out the printed materials. The mediation agreement. The note left at my door. The screenshots of attempted entries. The property firm email with the provisional transfer forms. The photocopied forged signature. My father's face blanched first. Mom leaned forward. You can't seriously think that. I interrupted gently. The lake house has cameras. Multiple cameras. Abby's hand stopped moving. You don't have the right, Mom said, her voice cracking. You don't have the right to spy on your family. I have the right to protect my home, I said. Especially when someone tries to enter it without permission. That's not what happened, Dad snapped. I took out my phone and played the audio excerpt from the backyard camera, the part where Mom reassured him there were no cameras back there, the part where they discussed trying the kitchen door. The room went still. You recorded us? Abby whispered. You recorded yourselves, I said. I simply saved it. Mom slammed her fist on the table. This is betrayal. No, I corrected. This is accountability. She lunged for the papers, but I covered them with my hand. These copies are for me. Not you. You're blowing this out of proportion, Dad said. We were trying to fix things. By forging my signature? I asked calmly. Mom flinched. We didn't forge anything. I slid the photocopy toward them. Someone tried. Abby swallowed. Mom, you said she had already agreed. Mom shot her a glare so sharp it could cut bone. I decided then to deliver the finishing blow, clean and factual. The community bylaws, I said, pulling out the printed page, state clearly that any property transfer requires the notarized, in-person signature of the title holder. Clause 14b. You knew I didn't sign anything, yet you acted as if something existed. Mom's voice shook now. We were going to fix it later. There is no later when legal documents are involved, I said. Dad's voice dropped into pleading. We didn't mean harm. We thought. You assumed, I said. You assumed I would fold, that I would be too ashamed or too conditioned to challenge you. You assumed silence would be easier for me than truth. No one spoke. I stood. This ends now. Mom looked up at me with something between hatred and fear. If you walk out that door, don't expect us to take you back. I met her gaze evenly. You already told me I wasn't part of the family. I'm simply agreeing with you. The chipped mug glinted under the fluorescent lights as I placed it back into my bag. I walked toward the exit. Halfway there, Abby stood abruptly. Wait, she whispered. Can we talk? Just us? I turned to her. Later. She nodded shakily. My parents said nothing. Their silence wasn't grief. It was the sound of losing control. And control was the only currency they ever valued. Outside, the cold air stung my cheeks. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the knowledge that everything was finally real, irreversible, exposed. The truth was out. But justice? That part wasn't finished yet. The morning after the family meeting, I woke to a voicemail from Abby. Her voice was tight, urgent, stripped of the arrogance she usually borrowed from our parents. Please, she whispered, I need to explain. Call me back. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed space, clean, uninterrupted thinking. Because what came next mattered more than any confrontation. It needed to be structured, documented, and final. At 10 a.m., I drove back to the lake house. Frost coated the grass, the kind that makes every footstep sound louder than it actually is. The house stood exactly as I left it, locked, secure, mine. Yet I still walked the perimeter, checking each window, each door, each camera angle. Evidence wasn't just a weapon, it was insurance. Inside, I made coffee, poured it into my chipped mug, and sat at the small kitchen table overlooking the lake. That mug, cracked handle, faded lettering, had survived years of moves, disagreements, and quietly swallowed insults. It had become a symbol, fragile but enduring. Flawed but functional. A reminder that leaving didn't make me broken, staying would have. My phone buzzed. A new email, from Harriman and Cole Property Services. Notice of withdrawal, partial transfer request cancelled due to inconsistent documentation. Below it. We advise you to review security of your personal legal documents. They had folded within 24 hours. Good. But 10 minutes later, the doorbell camera chimed. Someone was at the front door. Mom. Of course. I watched through the live feed as she paced on the porch, arms crossed, jaw tight. She rang the bell again, hands trembling in the cold. Then she spoke aloud, unaware the camera captured every word. I know you can see me. Don't be childish. Open this door. Childish. The favorite accusation of people who have lost control. She kept going. You can't cut us out. We're your family. We did what we had to do. That line, we did what we had to do, was the exact justification my father used whenever he bulldozed decisions without asking. She stepped closer to the door. Fine. If you won't talk, I'll explain everything when the board hears about this. The board? The Lakeside Community Board? The one that oversaw property compliance and disputes? That was interesting. And reckless. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door, not to let her in, but to meet her outside where every camera had a clear angle. As I opened the door, she turned, startled. I need to talk to you, she said. I know, I replied. You embarrassed us yesterday. I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. The cold cut sharp against my face. You embarrassed yourselves, I said. I simply presented the truth. She let out a frustrated breath. You don't understand how this looks. People talk. Let them. Her voice grew shrill. You have a duty to this family. No, I said. I have a duty to myself. And what about the lake house? The family memories. Stop, I cut in. You tried to forge my signature. She flinched. We didn't intend to submit it. It was a draft. A discussion. You're twisting things. You sent it to a law office. That was a mistake. Your father got confused. He wasn't confused on the camera footage, I said. Her eyes darted. You recording us like that was a violation. I smiled faintly. You standing on my property and trying to enter was a violation. She swallowed hard. Look, we love you. But you push us away. You make things impossible. I set boundaries, I said. You tried to bulldoze them. You should have just signed the agreement, she snapped. It would have solved everything. There it was. The real belief. The core assumption, that my compliance was the key to family harmony. No, I said softly. It would have solved your illusion of control. Her face twisted, hurt, anger, disbelief all tangled together. Why are you doing this to us? I'm not doing anything to you, I said. I'm simply refusing to participate in the version of family you created. Silence stretched between us, brittle as winter branches. Then she said it, the sentence that would become the final proof I needed. You forced us to cut you off. You should be grateful we're offering to reverse it. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly revealing, so unintentionally honest. I am grateful, I said. She blinked. What? I'm grateful you said that on camera. Her face strained. What camera? She whispered. I tilted my head slightly. The one above your shoulder. She turned, eyes wide, just as the small indicator light blinked. I didn't rub it in. I didn't lecture. I simply said, "This ends today." She tried to speak, but her voice failed. I walked past her, down the steps, and toward my car. Halfway there, she called after me. What happens now? I turned. Now? I file a formal notice with the community board documenting attempted entry, coercion, and false transfer claims. They'll ban you and Dad from the property until the review is complete. Possibly longer. She stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. You wouldn't. You already did, I said. I'm just cleaning up the mess. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. And us? The family? I met her eyes steadily. You wrote that I was no longer part of it. I'm honoring your request. I got into my car and closed the door. Mom stayed frozen on the porch, defeated, not by cruelty, but by consequences she never imagined would apply to her. As I drove away, my chipped mug sat in the cup holder, warm coffee inside, a quiet reminder. Broken things can be repaired. Families built on control cannot. Later that week, I filed the report with the board. The ban was immediate pending review. Harriman and Cole confirmed the attempted fraudulent transfer. And Abby eventually texted. I'm sorry. I didn't know it would go that far. I want to do better. I waited a day before replying, then start by respecting my boundaries. No promises. No reunions. Just conditions. Clear ones. Because justice isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's procedural. Documented. Inevitable. And as I sat on the lake house deck that evening, cold air, quiet water, chipped mug in hand, I felt something settle in my chest. Not victory. Peace. A peace I earned by refusing to be erased, by choosing truth over appearances, and by letting my family face the consequences of their own actions. They wrote me out. I simply accepted it, and built a life where I didn't need them to write me back in.